I'm 77 years old, and I didn't know silence could destroy a family until I was standing in an empty house that used to be loud with it, not shouting. Just people moving around, doors opening and closing, voices in other rooms. All of that is gone now. Again, I'm not telling this because I want to be understood. At my age, understanding doesn't change much. I'm telling it because silence has a way of rewriting the past if you let it. And I want this said out loud at least once before I'm done. These days, time feels thin, not fast, thin, like there's not much space left between moments. I wake up early, even when I don't need to. I sit at the kitchen table longer than I used to. I listen to the house settle, pipes knocking, wind against the windows, sounds you only notice when there's nothing else. People talk about loneliness as if it arrives suddenly. It doesn't. It arrives the same way silence does. Slowly, politely. It waits for you to get used to it. When I was younger, I believed silence was safe. I thought it kept things calm. I thought not saying the wrong thing was the same as saying the right one. No one ever taught me otherwise. I grew up in a house where feelings stayed. My father worked. My mother managed everything else. They didn't argue much, but they didn't talk much either. If something was wrong, it stayed wrong quietly. I learned early that you could live that way. In my 20s, I married a woman who laughed easily. She filled rooms without trying. I loved that about her, even though it made me uncomfortable sometimes. She asked questions. She wanted to talk things through. I told myself I was the steady one. We had children. 2 of them, loud, curious, always asking why. I loved them deeply. I just didn't know how to speak that love out loud. I worked long hours. That was normal. That was what you did. When I came home tired, I wanted peace. Quiet dinners, no conflict. I thought I was protecting the family from stress. What I was really doing was training us not to talk. When my wife brought up concerns, I listened without responding much. I nodded. I said things like, "We'll see," or "Let's not make a big deal out of it." I believed I was being reasonable. She believed I wasn't hearing her. There were arguments we never had. Conversations we postponed because the kids were around, or because it was late, or because tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow kept moving. The kids grew. They learned who they could talk to and who they couldn't. They learned what topics made the room heavy. They learned that silence ended discussions faster than words. Break. I didn't notice this happening, or maybe I did and I didn't want to name it. Family dinners got shorter, then less frequent. Everyone was busy. That felt normal too. When my son was a teenager, there was a period where he barely spoke to me. I told myself it was a phase. I told myself boys pull away. I waited for him to come back around. No, he didn't. My daughter tried longer. She would start conversations, ask how I was. Tell me about her life. I answered, but briefly. I didn't ask many questions back. I didn't want to pry. I thought giving space was respectful. Space, it turns out, can feel like absence. The slow cost of all this didn't come with a warning. It came in missed graduations because work ran late. Phone calls returned days after they were made. Holidays that felt more like obligations than gatherings. No one yelled. No one slammed doors. That's what made it easy to ignore. I told myself we were a calm family. I was proud of that. The turning point came later than I expected and earlier than I was ready for. My wife got sick. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a diagnosis that rearranged our days. We spent more time together then. Sitting in waiting rooms, driving to appointments, I thought this would bring us closer. Instead, it showed me how far apart we already were. One afternoon, sitting in the car outside the hospital, she said, "I don't know how to talk to you anymore." She didn't say it angrily. She sounded tired. I wanted to argue to defend myself, to explain all the ways I'd been there. But the truth sat between us, and it didn't need explaining. Now, she passed 2 years later after the funeral. The house was full of people for a while. Then it wasn't. That's when the silence changed. It wasn't just quiet. It was empty. The kids came by less often. Calls became shorter. I told myself they had their own lives. That was true. It just wasn't the whole truth. One night, months later, I realized I didn't know much about my grandchildren. Their interests, their worries. I had seen them grow, but I hadn't really been with them. I tried to reach out more then. I really did. But silence had already done its work. Conversations felt stiff, careful, like everyone was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I had taught them that what can't be fixed now is not one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones. All the times I chose quiet over connection. All the times I thought restraint was kindness. I'm bland you can't go back and insert words where years of silence have settled. You can't ask people to unlearn what they learned from you. I live alone now. My days are simple. I take care of myself, I keep the house clean, I watch the same news programs, I mark time with routines, plans. Sometimes I imagine what it would have been like if I had spoken more, if I had asked questions even when they felt awkward, if I had said, "Tell me more," instead of letting the conversation fade. I don't know if it would have saved everything, but I know silence didn't. Band, if you're listening to this, I'm not here to tell you to talk more. I wouldn't know how to say that without it sounding empty. I'm just telling you what I learned too late. And silence isn't neutral. It teaches people how much room they take up in your life. I thought love was something you felt quietly. I didn't understand. It also needed to be heard. But I don't have many years left. That's not a complaint. It's just the math of it. I spend some of that time writing letters I may never send, saying things I should have said sooner. If this meant something to you, you don't have to do anything with it. Just remember that families don't usually fall apart because of too many words. Mandans, they fall apart because of the ones that never get spoken. I'm just 2 years old. Silence felt safe to me once. Now it's all that's left.